Hello guys and welcome back to FATBOSS TV. Today we're back for more raid testing on the 7.3 PTR. Today we're looking at King Garoth from Antorus, the Burning Throne.
Yes, this two-phase fight is roughly 7th in the instance, and you'll be fighting a giant immobile monstrosity during phase 1, and then destroying the Fel Reavers he is constructing during phase 2.
Now before we go into anything, this footage is from the PTR, so things are subject to change. Although to be fair, usually they don't change too much. Either way, a full guide will be up on the channel just after we kill this guy on live servers. So let's jump into this encounter and talk about phase 1.
Now during phase 1, you'll be fighting the boss directly. Tanks will be needing to deal with Forging Strike. This hits them and anyone within 5 yards of them for a ton of damage, whilst also applying a debuff which increases the damage you take from Forging Strike by 200% for 20 seconds. So the tank needs to make sure that they take this hit alone, whilst using damage reduction for each of the hits. You want to taunt off each other when your debuff drops, and this is usually around 2 stacks. The raid will need to be spread 5 yards for Reverberating Strike. This will deal a burst of damage to a single player and anyone within 5 yards of them, whilst also leaving a small detonation charge on the ground. This charge is permanent and will pulse out damage to anyone within 5 yards each time a new Reverberating Strike is cast. So you need to keep an eye on your feet and make sure that you do not stand on top of these charges, especially when a new Reverberating Strike is due to be recast. For us, these always appeared to spawn in melee. We're not sure if it's a bug or they just simply don't spawn on ranged players. We'll have to see when we get there on live. The thing that's going to kill you the most in this fight is definitely the Ruiner cast. After a short charge up time, the boss will send out a large flood of Fel goo, dealing a huge amount of damage to anyone who stands within it. He'll then either rotate left or right, moving the Ruiner along with him. Now as the boss is first casting the spell, he'll face a random direction, and this is the direction that the Ruiner is going to be spewing into, so this cast time is the window that you have to react. You need to see what direction he is facing in and move out of the way, and also be prepared to keep running if he turns your way. The last major ability the boss does in this phase is that he will frequently spawn 3 diabolic bombs at once, or only 1 at a time on normal. These orbs will start rolling around the boss at a fixed distance and they last until you run into them. If you are to run into an orb, it will explode, dealing damage to the entire raid which drops off with distance. You want to have the off tank on one side of the boss with the rest of the raid on the other. That tank can then soak each of the orbs on that side, making sure that they leave enough time between each orb explosion so that the raid can be topped up. Now in theory you could dodge these orbs throughout the entire fight, however as you need to move around a fair amount and be spread for certain abilities, you'll eventually be overrun and have a ton of orbs that really limit your movement. By soaking them frequently, you make sure that you'll never be overrun and you'll always have the space you need to deal with the other abilities in the encounter. Now you may notice that the boss has an energy bar. Once this reaches 100%, he'll transition into phase 2.
When he transitions, he'll immediately reduce the damage he takes by 99% and open up 3 small platforms around the sides of the encounter area. Each platform will have an add inside. This add will remain dormant for 30 seconds and during this time it will have a damage taken increased debuff which becomes less potent over time. Once this 30-second window is over, the add will activate and the raid will have to deal with them. Ideally you do not want to have to deal with all of these 3 Fel Reaver adds at once. Really your group should be able to kill off 2 of them before they even activate. To do this, we found that just splitting the raid into 2 equal groups works best. By doing this, you should have enough time to kill 2 of them before the phase ends. Whilst killing the dormant adds, the raid will be taking unavoidable ticking damage, and there will be patches on the ground that you'll need to avoid. Because of this, it's also important that you evenly split your healers when forming these groups, just to make sure that everyone stays healthy. After the groups have killed their add, they then want to go over and group up by the final add, and just try and kill it off as soon as possible. Now there are 3 different types of adds you can get and all of them need to be tanked, but when they activate they also have their own special abilities. The Annihilator will cast Annihilation. This will make a few zones in the encounter area and after a short while they'll explode and do a flat burst of damage to the entire raid. However, if a player stands within the zone, they can take the damage instead. You want to send a single player to soak each zone because the zones, thankfully, do not have split damage, so there's no point having multiple people in a zone. The Decimator will cast Decimation. Just like the first boss in Antorus, this will place a debuff on a few players and after the debuff times out, it will spawn a gigantic circle, which will then explode, dealing a flat amount of damage to the raid and even more damage to anyone within the circle. You just want all the debuff players to move away from the group to place the circles in safe locations. To make this even easier, you might want the raid to stack up directly underneath the add, and as soon as the debuffs go out, they have lots of room to go and spread in. And finally, the Demolisher will cast Demolish. This places a debuff on a couple of raid members, and after the debuff expires, it will deal shadow damage split between all players nearby, whilst also leaving a debuff which increases the shadow damage you take by 100% for 4 seconds. Unfortunately, these debuffs expire in a staggered way, so you can't just have them explode on the same people over and over again because the damage taken increase. Those players are simply just going to die. So you'll need to make sure that a different group soaks each debuff, as the shadow damage taken increase can make the second debuff explosion deadly. Now 40 seconds after entering Phase 2, you'll then return back to Phase 1 with whatever adds you have left. The side platforms will now reseal, instantly killing anyone that is within them, so it's really important that you make sure you move out, and at this point all the DPS want to be killing off any adds that are left over to try and bring the encounter back under control. Now with the adds, they always spawn in the same set combinations, which allows you to choose in advance which ones you want to kill last. The first time you enter Phase 2, you'll have one of each ad. We always killed off the Demolisher and the Annihilator, as we felt the Decimator's abilities are easier to deal with. The second time you go in Phase 2, you'll have a Demolisher and 2 Annihilators. After experimenting with this a bit, we decided that killing off a Demolisher and 1 Annihilator was best, as Demolishers are just a complete pain in the arse. And the third time that you enter Phase 2, you have 2 Decimators and 1 Annihilator. We recommend killing off the Annihilator and 1 of the Decimators. It is after this third Phase 2 that the boss should be almost dead, because each time you kill the adds, it just deals flat % damage to the boss, which really speeds up the encounter quite a lot. So just kill any remaining adds as soon as you re-enter that Phase 1, and then the fight just repeats from there. So what do we think?
Yeah, it's a good fight. The abilities come in frequently, and it does keep you on your toes, whether that's like dodging orbs, or moving out of the huge flood of Felgu, or running to the adds to go and deal with them. There's like always something that you need to be keeping an eye on, which is nice. The fight itself also does seem to be quite short, which is nice considering there are fairly few abilities. If you're going to be here for 10 minutes, by like minute number 6, you're kind of like, okay, you can be dead now, you know. So it's nice that the fight's roughly around 5 or 6 minutes long. What is quite cool is choice. I always do like choices in fights because you can make like those sort of decisions based on your composition. So getting to choose which ad you want to kill is a really, really neat idea. The ads, in my opinion, are all equally horrible to deal with, but some comps might like certain ads more than others. Like if you have a comp that has really mobile classes, say you have like 3 mages, like 4 demon hunters, loads of hunters, then you might want to keep the Annihilator, as the patches are like super easy to get to.
Yeah.
But if you have like, maybe you have a ton of immunities in your raid because you know you just came out of Tomb of Sargeras and that's the right thing to do. Maybe you have you keep the Demolisher ad up because that debuff, if you want, you can just go out and ice block it or cloak it off, and nobody has to take the shared damage.
I think it's also going to be quite a fun farm boss to see if you can try and push to kill that third ad before Phase 1 starts again. It'll be possible eventually, especially if you've got like a dot heavy comp. You could just rotate around the room, just keep dotting up all the ads, and perhaps they'll all die before the transition. Be interesting to see nonetheless.
Yeah.
The only small complaint I have about the fight is the orbs. They were sometimes very difficult to soak, but I think that might just be because we're testing from the UK. Yeah. And obviously the servers are in the US, so we have quite large MS. I'm going to guess that was the issue, rather than just the orbs hitbox. But we'll see on live servers, I guess.
That's where we're going to leave it today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, then make sure you leave a like on it. It helps us out a lot. And before we do go, we want to give a huge shout out to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You guys are absolutely fantastic. Thank you so, so much for your continued support. And thank you again for watching, guys. And we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thanks for watching.